It has been quite the whirlwind journey for the likely Heisman winner, Caleb Williams. The five-star recruit from D.C. made his college decision with perhaps the most spectacular announcement in the history of CBS Sports HQ.
Caleb Williams, let's make it official.
I'm ready to go and gain the trust of my teammates, earn the starting spot, and hopefully help them get to a national championship.
We think he has all the talent to be a Heisman Trophy candidate.
Williams was about to be the next great Oklahoma quarterback, following in the footsteps of recent Heisman winners Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. And when he got his opportunity, he was more than ready, leading the Sooners to a stunning second-half comeback against Texas and snatching the starting job from former Heisman hopeful Spencer Rattler. But his spectacular true freshman season was the only season he would spend in Norman.
So honored to be the next head football coach here at USC.
Despite USC falling short against Utah twice, the second of which ending their playoff hopes, Williams was the most consistent and dynamic player in college football.
First down and more, first down and touchdown.
Now Williams is expected to become the third Trojan quarterback to win the most prestigious award in college sports. And if you ask many of the brightest minds in the sport, he would be the #1 overall pick in this year's draft, if he were eligible. Luckily for Lincoln Riley and the Trojan faithful, he's not, which means he has another full year to show off his incredible talents for the men of Troy.
Well, this is CBS Sports HQ, delivered by Papa John's, and a look at the full list of Heisman finalists. Caleb Williams will be joined in New York by Georgia quarterback Stetson Bennett, Ohio State QB C.J. Stroud, and TCU quarterback Max Duggan. The Heisman Trophy ceremony is set for later tonight in New York City. And Russ Thaler back here on the HQ with Sportsline's Jon Berger, host of the Cover 3 podcast, Chip Patterson, and Tom Fornelli of CBS Sports. Tom, Caleb Williams, he is the overwhelming favorite. What makes him a worthy Heisman candidate / perhaps winner tonight?
Well, I think that when you look at how Heismans have been settled in recent years, particularly in the college football playoff era, it helps if you play on a team that at least competed for a college football playoff spot. And you look at the 4 finalists for this, 3 of the quarterbacks are playing for teams that are in the college football playoff, and Caleb Williams is the only one that did it. So it is kind of bucking the trend in that sense, but this has become more of a quarterback award in recent seasons. And when you look at the overall numbers, Caleb Williams had a fantastic season in an offense that is designed around the quarterback and that he mastered and flourished in. And if you look back to that Pac-12 championship game, yes, the Trojans lost to Utah. They were up 17-3 before Caleb Williams came down with a hamstring injury, and that injury really hampered him for the rest of the game, and it coincided with Utah getting back into the game, taking the lead, and ending up winning it, which leads to a whole lot of questions of what would have happened had Caleb Williams not pulled his hamstring in the game. That's woulda, coulda, shoulda. We'll never know. But if you just look at the entire season from start to finish, he's got incredible numbers. He plays in a very good offense. Lincoln Riley seems to be very good at molding Heisman-winning quarterbacks. And yeah, you're right. Anytime sports books start pulling the odds from their books before the ceremony, that's a pretty good indication of what everybody thinks is going to happen. So I think Caleb Williams, there's a very good shot he will become Lincoln Riley's 3rd Heisman-winning quarterback tonight in New York.
Yeah, good stuff. Tom just mentioned it. I think the biggest thing for me is just when you look at the Heisman, like people like shiny performances on a big stage. And I don't know on this, you look at this candidate pool, and no offense against Max Duggan and the others and Stroud and Stetson Bennett, I don't think any college football players has performed better on a big stage more frequently with big plays than Caleb Williams. Furthermore, when you look at next year and him rolling into next year, not draft eligible, he'll be the #1 guy. But I just think it's a difference maker when you're on national television and you're playing in those marquee games and you see some of the plays this guy has made. And then, of course, the reruns on every sports show that runs for the next week. He's got a lot of publicity. He plays for a shiny program. Lincoln Riley is the head coach at USC. He's got everything. He's sitting there in LA as well. So I think you add all this up, I think this is an easy decision. He'll roll into next year. The biggest thing for me is what's next year going to look like. He's going to be the #1 candidate, assuming he can stay healthy. I think he wraps that up. But I also think, guys, there's some players that are going to be in the mix next year that maybe people people aren't talking about, including J.J. McCarthy at quarterback at Michigan and Marvin Harrison, the wide receiver at Ohio State. But we'll get into that a little bit. But he's having a phenomenal year, Caleb Williams, and he's done it on the biggest stage.
Yeah, Caleb Williams checks all the boxes. When you look at the Heisman Trophy, there's a couple different ways that you can get there. You know, being the best player or a star player on a team that is contending for a national championship late into the season. USC's not in the college football playoff, but check. They were number 4 in the college football playoff rankings going into conference championship Saturday. You could be statistically great. You think about a Robert Griffin III at Baylor. Couple losses on the schedule, nowhere close to the national championship contention, but statistically he was phenomenal, and that is a check as well. He's number 1 nationally in passing touchdowns, number 1 in points responsible per game, number 3 in passing yards, number 6 in pass efficiency. I mean, this is a player in Caleb Williams who is getting it done, yes, on the big stage, but even throughout the entire season, he's been phenomenal. And those Heisman voters that do want a Heisman moment, well, how about 470 yards and 3 touchdowns against UCLA? How about 4 total touchdowns against Notre Dame? He delivered the Heisman moments. Statistically on the whole season, he was elite among all players in college football. And yes, he is the shiny object, the star player for a USC team that was still contending for a national championship heading into conference championship Saturday. Caleb Williams is an overwhelming favorite because he checks all the boxes for all the different ways that you can win a Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, it's certainly exciting for all 4 finalists who get to go to New York and go through the whole process. Maybe not a whole lot of suspense this year with who's going to win the Heisman Trophy. But, John, you started talking about it already. We're getting into next year. We're thinking about who's in line, who's on Heisman watch. So, John, I'm going to let you pick up that conversation. You mentioned the Michigan quarterback. Who else?
You know, I think you could look at a couple of different ones. I think J.J. McCarthy, I think he's going to continue to grow and develop, guys. And you look at the Ohio State game, and I realized the game got out of hand late in the game for Ohio State. But you look at what he's done coming into the season. It really surprised me that Michigan made the decision that they did in giving him the starting job early in the year, considering they won the Big Ten title last year with a different quarterback. So that says a lot. I didn't necessarily buy into it, but having seen his body of work, I think he's a difference maker with his ability to create, improvise, get the ball downfield. I think Michigan is going to be they may even be better than they are this year, next year, with that ground attack ability to run the football. So I think you got to give him serious consideration. I think Marvin Harrison, the wide receiver at Ohio State, I think he's another guy. If Ohio State jumps out, you're looking at a team that maybe they get 6 wins, 7 wins deep into the year. This is going to be their primary playmaker. You talk about shiny objects on a big stage. I think you can look at that. I think the next one would be Kyle McCord, the quarterback. Let's assume, who knows what's going to happen to Stroud. I think Kyle McCord, the quarterback for Ohio State or Georgia or Alabama for that matter, I think you got to start looking at them and start tracking those 2 or 3 guys. They could have special seasons next year.
I think that when they reveal the full voting from the Heisman Trophy, we're going to find that North Carolina quarterback Drake May is going to be in the top 10 from picking up some second place and some third place votes. I mean, he had 35 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions on the season. He's one of 4 quarterbacks to throw for more than 4,000 yards, averaging 316 per game. And until some late season losses, admittedly very disappointing performances against NC State and Clemson, and yes, the loss to Georgia Tech, Drake May himself was very much a part of this Heisman Trophy picture. So I think that as North Carolina makes the transition of offensive coordinator with Phil Longo expected to go link up with Luke Fickell at Wisconsin, that we will see that position of offensive coordinator to coach Drake May is going to be attractive. I think that Mac Brown's going to make a solid hire, and I think the transfer portal is going to provide Drake May with some good options at wide receiver as well. I like May's chances to be able to pick up where he left off from early November and, again, go from being a top 10 Heisman Trophy voting points getter to maybe being a top 3 Heisman Trophy voting points getter next season.
You know, Chip's got one ACC quarterback who was in the contention for the playoff spots towards the end of the year before North Carolina lost games at the end. I'm going to go with another ACC quarterback who his team lost 3 games during the middle of the season, which caused everybody to just move on and forget they exist. I'm talking about Florida State quarterback Jordan Travis, who was a fantastic player this season. If you look at his overall numbers, 3,163 total yards, 29 total touchdowns, 4 interceptions. A basic stat that I like to use for evaluating quarterback efficiency, I call it yards per touch, but really it's just how many yards per pass attempt and rush attempt. He had 8.11, which ranked 9th in the nation this year, and more importantly, was higher than guys like Caleb Williams and Max Duggan, who are both in New York for the Heisman ceremony. And I think that this Florida State team, if you look at how they finished the season and how well they were playing, they are poised to be competing for an ACC championship next year, and they will be in the college football playoff conversation. And if Jordan Travis plays the way he did this season in a team competing for a national title and a conference championship, he's going to be in contention for a Heisman Trophy, and he should be, because he's a very fun player to watch. He's one of the most entertaining players in the country. He's a lot like Caleb Williams in that aspect.
All right, guys, John, Tom, Chip, thank you so much. Looking forward to all the action, including the Heisman Trophy Awards ceremony coming up later tonight, and more from Chip and Tom. Be sure to check out their podcast, the Cover 3 podcast, for breaking news, week recaps, and the best bets in college football. There's no better podcast to keep you up to date and help you make some money. It's the Cover 3 podcast. Download and subscribe today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.